How's it going, everyone? Sorry for Warner Storms 1000. Today is December 21st, 2020, and today we'll primarily focus on this Christmas snowstorm that's going to impact pretty much the entire nation, extending from the Northwest Pacific all the way to the Northeast. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe for more content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and just turn on post notifications if you want to see more weather related content from me. So let's first take a look at the GFS model, which you see is taking a pretty strong snowstorm to the northeast only around 4 days from now, and we see a fairly strong low pressure system just above the border at 987 millibars, and right behind it you just see a huge Arctic dip in the jet stream. And what's interesting is that if you saw my other videos, the European was always less lenient on bringing as much of a dip. However, I've been noticing over the past several runs, the European is now leaning more towards the GFS's side, which is bringing a much stronger dip, jet stream dip to the United States, and it's also bringing a stronger storm as a result of that. So, what does this mean? What does this mean if we see a stronger or more pronounced jet stream dip? Well, for one thing, is that it means that this storm will be more powerful in this scenario, and also since there's more cold air dipping down, the chances of snow throughout the United States and in a lot of places pretty much increase, even going as far south as the mid-Atlantic, since we're gonna see a lot of winter-like air filter in to even the southeast of United States. So it definitely increases the chances of snow when we see that cold air dip that far south. And now the European is leaning a little bit more towards GFS's side. It isn't 100% there just yet, because the European does think that the jet stream dip will happen later than GFS, because if we compare the European model 3 days from now to the GFS, you're going to see that the GFS has a lot more of a pronounced jet stream dip earlier than the European model has. Because if you take a look at 60 hours from now, you already see the dark blue, which represents much colder Arctic air, dip down into the United States. However, for the European, you don't see that just yet. It's not until 4 days from now we see the 96 hours from now we see some of the Arctic air, or the coldest of the Arctic air, dip down into the United States. So this could so in the European model scenario, this means that you're less likely to receive as much snow in the northern United States and the northern Midwest states, because the jet stream dip isn't as pronounced in the European model, and because of that, the storm's going to be a lot weaker. It won't have as much convection within the low pressure system, and as a result, there won't be as much of that heavy precipitation through the northern Midwest states. However, if the GFS model were correct, definitely expect more snow throughout the Midwest. However, in terms of in terms of 4 or 5 days from now, it seems like the European and the GFS are now very similar in where in the state that the storm will be in within 4 to 5 days from now, because they both expect it to hover around the 985 millibar range in terms of how powerful it will be. And also they're both agreeing that there will be just a huge jet stream dip through the eastern half of the United States. The only major difference I see is that the European does this later, which means that you're less likely to see more snow if the European model is correct. However, in the European model's case, you're expected to receive mainly nearly very similar snowfall amounts in the eastern half of the US. I'm talking about when the forecast time frame is 4 or 5 days from now. So it's one of those weird cases where the computer models agree more in the long-term future rather than in the short-term future. So it's going to be interesting to see. However, I will say with confidence that in the in the northern Midwest states, you will experience a snowstorm, whether your European is right or the GFS model is right. The only thing I'm debating when mentioning the GFS and European models snowfall forecast is how much snow you will get. It's pretty much inevitable that the northern states will receive a pretty decent chunk of snow. However, what makes the difference is how powerful this storm is to determine how much snow you'll get. And currently, both the GFS model and the European model are still in a little bit of disagreement, especially when we're in the 3 day forecast range, because the GFS is much stronger and the European is much weaker by the time it reaches Minnesota. However, I will expect probably a range of around 3 to 6 inches, and then maybe up to 10 inches in northern Minnesota, where the storm really gets going, and that storm really begins to encounter the unstable air mass as the cold air really begins to filter in and mix in with this warm air mass. So I do believe the snowfall intensity will increase as you move further east with this storm, and that's expected to continue as this jet stream dip continues to get more pronounced and move into the eastern half of the United States, which is still currently will be pretty warm by the time that jet stream dip reaches there. So I do expect a decent amount of snowfall throughout the northern Midwest states. However, there's still uncertainty of how much snowfall you'll receive. But let's take a look at the GFS model's radar forecast, because while the GFS and the European model are still in a little bit of a disagreement with each other, they still are at least somewhat similar in terms of the track. So it will give you a basic idea of what to expect. So going into tomorrow, you begin to see that low pressure system come off the coast of the Northwest Pacific. It's going to be a little bit too far south to be considered an Alberta Clipper, but it will bring a lot of snow in the higher elevations like an Alberta Clipper, and maybe even more, because this is going to come off the Northwest Pacific a little bit powerful at 994 millibars. So definitely expect a pretty big snowfall event in the Cascade Mountain ranges, and then extending to the Rocky Mountains of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. I almost said Wisconsin, but Wyoming. And then you see that snow will begin to extend, and then the snow extends to the Dakotas, and you get a pretty big band of snow in the northern Minnesota, while the southern Minnesota will miss out on most of it. However, that jet stream dip will begin to get more pronounced, because take a look at the blue contour, the 540 contour, because that's usually the contour that separates freezing from non-freezing temperature. So just take a look at that contour, and you see that jet stream dip becomes very pronounced. And with a jet stream dip this pronounced, it's definitely gonna create just a lot of convection ahead of it, since that cold dense air is gonna force a lot of that lighter, less dense warm air up into the atmosphere aloft. And with this less dense air, there's a lot of humidity, there's a lot of water vapor in it. So we're gonna see that convection begin around 3 days from now, by the time the low pressure system reaches just above the border of Minnesota, and then we begin to see that snow extend. And like I said in my previous video, this is going to be a sort of a weird, rare sort of storm, because there's going to be precipitation behind this cold front, which means that a lot of this rain along this cold front will change over to snow, because a lot of that precipitation, oddly enough, is going to move behind the cold front, which is untypical for mid-latitude cyclones, because usually with mid-latitude cyclones, there's just too much dry air behind the cold front to really get any sort of precipitation, let alone snow, behind the cold front. While there is enough cold air behind the cold front, it's just usually too dry. But this is one of those rare situations where we're going to see precipitation behind the cold front, and as a result of that, we're going to see a lot more snow from this along the cold front. And you see by the 4-day time frame in the Northeast, you just see a pretty heavy band of snow. And not only that, you see a lot of rain and a lot of thunderstorm activity just along that cold front. So even if you're not in the snow threat in the Northeast, you should definitely watch out for enhanced rainfall and an enhanced risk of flash flooding, because look at how much convection the GFS, I mean, look at how much precipitation and how fast the rainfall rates are the GFS is predicting going into 4 days from now as a result of this jet stream dip. And not only that, there's going to be heavy snow. You see the darkest of the dark of blues behind that cold front, and that represents very high snowfall rates. So definitely expect a sizable amount of snowfall. There's still a lot of uncertainty with this because 4 days out, a lot could definitely change. And I still do believe there is a chance that you're going to experience much less snowfall than the GFS is currently forecasting. However, at this point, there might be some localized areas in the Northeast that could experience over a foot of snow, and they're going to be the same areas that just got pounded by Winter Storm Gale less than a week ago. So to add another foot of snow on top of the 40 plus some areas got will be problematic for a lot of people who just shoveled out the snow. And you see that the snow eventually, the low pressure system eventually moves out going into the 5 day time frame right around Christmas time. So you could see a white Christmas for a lot of the Northeast, which could be good news for a lot of you who love the snow. And yeah, there's just going to be this is going to be a nationwide event extending from the Northwest Pacific all the way to the Northeast. We still got details to iron out. We need to figure out the position of this low pressure system over the next several days. We need to figure out how much of a jet stream dip there will be, because that will determine how powerful the storm will be and how much cold air will be behind the cold front to change a lot of that rain over snow once it heads in the Northeast. And we also need to keep in mind of how much dry air will be behind the cold front, because there could be that possibility that there might be just enough dry air behind the cold front that there's barely going to be any sort of snow or precipitation behind the cold front, which could greatly limit the amount. So we have to iron those details all out over the next several days. However, at this point, it seems like the GFS model and the European model are agreeing that there will be some sort of significant snowstorm right around Christmas. And I do expect it more likely than not. We will see a major snowstorm somewhere in the Northeast at this point, even if it's in the very interior parts and doesn't affect that much people. I think the chances of a snowstorm are getting likely, as both the GFS and the European are now agreeing that there will be a pretty powerful low pressure system with a big Arctic dip behind it that will create the conditions for a heavy snowfall event. And there will be just enough unstable air just off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean to maybe form a new low pressure system, and that will enhance the snowfall totals for a lot of you guys with a stronger low pressure system. So like I said, still uncertain, but I am confident we will see a pretty sizable chunk of snow through the northern Midwest and the Northwest Pacific. However, going northeast, it gets a little more uncertain, but I do expect some sort of major snowstorm will happen somewhere in the Northeast. Now, let's look at the snowfall totals. So this is based off of my predictions, based off of what I've been seeing from both the GFS model and the European model, and I want you guys to take this with a big grain of salt, especially going east of Minnesota, where the low pressure, by the time the low pressure is here, it's still 4 days out, so a lot could change within 4 days. And even behind Minnesota, do take a small grain of salt with this, although I do think it's definitely more likely these snow totals will come for fruition in these areas. However, in the Midwest, I would expect these snowfall totals to happen more likely than not, because when we're between the 3 to 2 to 1 day time frame in the Northwest Pacific and the northern Midwest states, it becomes a little bit more uncertain. And while there could be changes in the forecast that could drastically change conditions. I would say it's at least around the ballpark in terms of what type of snowfall you'll experience west of Minnesota at this point, since it's not too far off this snowfall event. So you see that in a lot of the upper elevations, extending to the Cascade Mountains of Washington and through a big chunk of the Rocky Mountain ranges. Expect 6 to 12 inches, so up to a foot of snow is possible in the higher elevation. So it might be a good skiing week for you guys. Christmas skiing week for you guys in the Rocky Mountain regions. And then you see just outside of that, 3 to 6. The snowfall won't be as high in areas that are in lower elevation, because obviously there won't be as much condensation if you're in the lower elevations of the mountains. So expect less snowfall in those areas, and then around 1 to 3, even lower than that. And then extending to the northern Midwest states, I do expect a pretty sizable chunk of 3 to 6 inches throughout mainly North Dakota. I might have depicted this 3 to 6 inch category a little bit too far south. I think it should be a little bit more northward than that, based off of what I've been seeing in the GFS model. However, I'd expect 3 to 6 inches throughout a sizable chunk of North Dakota, and then maybe 1 to 3 throughout around South Dakota. And then in Minnesota, I think you could experience around the 6 to 12 inch you could experience 6 to 12 inches of snow in northern Minnesota. So watch out for that, because 6 to 12 inches is considered major for a lot of you guys. And then 3 to 6 right around Minneapolis, and then extending throughout the Great Lakes region, just a sizable chunk of 3 to 6 inches. While the 3 to 6 inches for a lot of you guys might not sound major, however, when again, you don't want to take the numbers too lightly, because even though it's only 3 to 6 inches, those 3 to 6 inches of snow could fall down fast. And if you're not prepared for that, or you're not expecting much from it, then it could be bad. Because if you're in a situation where you go out when it's snowing like 1 inch per hour, when the forecast is only 3 to 6 inches, and you're in pretty bad shape, and definitely in a bad situation at that point. So you don't want to be in that. You don't want to underestimate 3 to 6 inches of snow, especially if you're in the Great Lakes region, because it could fall down fast based off of what the GFS model is saying, where we're seeing those darker blues, which represent high snowfall rates. And then 1 to 3 just south of that, maybe 3 to 6 in Chicago. And then you see for a lot of the interior Northeast, I'm expecting potentially major Northeast snowstorm again. And these areas just got pounded by Winter Storm Gale just a couple of days ago. So to see another one is would be quite an event for you guys. However, again, take this with a huge grain of salt, because I think a lot could change within the next 4 days, especially when the computer models iron things out. So take it with a grain of salt. Don't take it as gospel just yet, because a lot could change in 4 days. But as of right now, I'm expecting 6 to 12 inches in the interior Northeast, 3 to 6, maybe I would say just north of the I-95 corridor, in Harrisburg, and then Pittsburgh could be in the 6 to 12 inch category, so watch out for that. And then maybe around 1 inch throughout right along the I-95 corridor, and maybe New York City. So you could experience a white Christmas in those areas. So definitely watch out for that. And I think it could be subject to change, because if there's a little bit more moisture behind the cold front, then we could see maybe more of 3 to 6 inches in New York City. So we just have to wait and see how the forecast models shift their forecast over the next several days, because it's going to be vital to see what happens with this storm. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you like this content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to share with friends and family who are interested. And I hope you guys have a good day.